Hey everybody, this is Andy. This episode is a continuation of the talk Rick and Teasy had, Notes from the Underground 2, which would be episode 49. Please listen to that if you haven't.
The Burros of Berea is a conversational podcast. We study the Bible and we talk about it. Not all of us are of the same faith, and one of us doesn't actually have a faith.
And that's wonderful. We all love one another, and we're going to continue to talk about these things.
The things we believe in and the things we believe about what we read in the Bible. Not all of these are necessarily true. Some of it is opinion and speculation. Thank you for
listening and speculating with us.
There you go. That was good. Yes.
You are listening to the Burros of Berea.
Notes from the underground.
Israel was not supposed to have a king. That was not what Israel was supposed to do. Israel was supposed to have God as their God, and they were supposed to have judges. But they wanted to be like the nations around them, and they were like, give us a king, give us a king. And God was like, all right, it's not going to be good, just FYI. He said it.
No, I know.
But okay, you want what you want. Go on ahead and have it.
Right.
Have you ever done that? I've done that with my daughter. She wants to put something in her mouth that I'm eating that I know she's not going to like. She's like, me. And I'm like, oh, you know what? Have some.
Go get it.
My
Go on
sister,
ahead.
when we were kids, and I'll just take a second, you remember Nestle's Quick is great in milk.
Mm-hmm.
It is not so great in mayonnaise. But my sister just knew it was going to be delicious. So my mom was like, fine.
Go ahead.
She did it. She went it up. She threw up.
Because human beings have to learn by experience. Unfortunately, most of the time, I'm pretty good. I saw people who took care of their skin and looked really good, and they were like, yeah, wear sunscreen. I was like, okay, I don't need to learn that the hard way. I'm happy to listen to your advice.
Right.
But for the most part, we have to learn the hard way. That's why they call it the hard way.
Yep.
So God's like, not a good idea. They're like, just give it to us. And he's like, fine. So how did God give them a king? He rose up a prophet. And he rose up a prophet, Samuel, who was unique in his role because he was not only a prophet, he was a priest. Not all prophets were priests.
Right.
Being a prophet and a priest is unusual in the history of Israel.
Sure.
Because only a prophet and a priest could then follow through with God's prophetic anointing of a king and actually perform the anointing. And that's what Samuel did. He anointed Saul, and then he turned around and anointed David. Mm-hmm. So there's something unique and special about the office of being both prophet and priest.
We know who that's a type of. Christ.
Oh.
He was prophet, priest, and king.
Yeah, but that's a whole... Yeah.
Oh, I know. You're right.
Yeah,
You're right.
Totally. I was like, who? Yeah. So, Jesus.
That's mid-Christology.
But if you look at the history, there is a pattern that we see. Moses was prophet, Aaron was the priest.
Yes.
We have this pattern. King David was the king, but Nathaniel was the prophet.
Mm-hmm.
Separation of powers.
We see a separation of these powers, right? And so when John says to Jesus, yo, you should baptize me. And Jesus is like, nah, dog, this is how it should be. It's fine. It's because Jesus understood that there was a specific pattern of the prophet priest anointing the king. Mm-hmm. And so Jesus allowed John and needed John to baptize him to fulfill what was spoken, which was John's ability as a prophet priest. Now, the only reason we know he was a prophet priest is because his father was a priest, and more importantly, his mother. That's
right, his mother
was a descendant of Aaron. So she was part of the was it the Aaronide priesthood?
Aaron, yeah.
Yeah, but there's the Aaronic priesthood, but that's a different thing. The Aaronide priesthood, which was a big fight between northern and southern Israel, that only those descendant of Aaron had the true rights to do X, Y, and Z in the temple.
Right.
So it's significant.
But something happens. Zadok comes in. For some reason, Zadok becomes that replacement priest or something.
At some point.
And then that's the one that it's supposed to come through, that priest line, right? Am I thinking it's not from the Aaronic, it's from Zadok.
Yeah, but that's after the thing,
right,
after the nation divides,
yes.
right? So it also speaks to this period of time when there's unity, which is what was Jesus's whole goal, to unite all of humanity under this one umbrella of God.
Right.
And so I think that's what's really significant about this kind of constant discussion. John was a prophet priest in the type of Samuel who had the anointing both to prophesy who was king and then followed through. Elijah must have been a priest because he put up all those sacrifices and lit the sacrifice. And then, when there was no rain, he doused everything in water to prove who was God
right.
or Baal. So I wish I knew more about, because I think his anointing in terms of to speak as a prophet like Elijah is, as has been even read in the scripture that we've read today. It's more about like he was the one that spoke out against the Pharisees and the Sadducees, and Elijah did the same thing. Elijah showed up right when Ahab marries Jezebel and begins reinstituting the worship of Baal in Israel.
Right.
Baal was the god of the water and fertility and life and death.
Yeah, Lord
And
of the earth. Lord,
right.
Yeah.
So Elijah showing up and speaking against Jezebel, which was like a big part of his entire ministry and like his entire time in the Bible. Well, part of that is this.
Yeah, she really didn't like Elijah much.
No, she didn't like Elijah much. But he was constantly challenging the power of her God in these very specific ways. Power over death
Yep.
and power over abundance. So John comes in the power and spirit of Elijah, and he anoints Jesus, who has what? Power over death and power over our abundance.
That's right.
And so it's like this total mirror.
Yeah. It's interesting
from
how
the
it
Old
works.
Testament, or from the Hebrew Bible to now. And so I think that's what the significance of like his bloodline is significant, just like Jesus's bloodline is significant. But at the same time, there's this divorce
Mm-hmm.
of bloodline being coming through the patrilineage.
Yes.
Because Mary's actually the bloodline that Jesus is technically descended from, and it's Elizabeth where John gets his blood right to be part of the Aaronite priesthood.
Yeah.
So it's also God sort of like flipping the bird to me, to man's assumptions about the way that things go and like where the bloodline comes from. God is saying, no, it doesn't come from man, it comes from me.
Right.
And so he intentionally gives that power through their mothers, gives their anointing through their mothers.
It's funny because the Bible in general is very much not like that, but a lot of things surrounding Jesus are kind of that way a little bit. Like it leans that way around him, and I find that interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, I find it fascinating. There's this whole conversation between Elizabeth and Mary. And the baby in Elizabeth's womb leaps when she meets Jesus. Like their dads aren't even a part of this story.
Yeah.
Like they don't have anything to do with it. This is a highlighting of the power of God and the way God uniquely works through women to give birth to God's Messiah and God's prophets. Like it's an interesting, which again, her being barren, that's something we see left and right. That's exactly how Samuel got here.
Can you imagine how much better we could understand the Bible if they had allowed women to speak and allowed women to write and can you imagine how much more we would get today?
50% more of
If
the
they hadn't-
population having input.
Or
Yes.
if they hadn't destroyed their texts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, did they?
No, they did,
Mary
yeah.
Magdalene, the book of Mary Magdalene was a thing.
Oh,
She wrote a gospel.
they found it.
It doesn't exist. I thought it existed.
found
No,
it.
they found it, but
Okay.
it's damaged.
But it's
there's
not a
only
part
like
of the
bits and pieces
zeitgeist
of it.
either.
It's
Yeah.
been like damaged, so there's only parts of it left over.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's too bad, but I think that was intentional. But I mean, so when you're reading the Bible from like a feminist perspective, like I do, I have to read between the lines in some ways because the voice of women is not scrubbed clean from these texts, but it's been dialed back.
Sure.
You got to really listen to hear it. And for me, when I read that whole text and that whole story, I see the power of God to redeem all people and also to break the bondage of patriarchy that kept women from participating in that full citizenship.
Yeah, I see that. And of course it's not pervasive, but like I say, kind of like there's an aura, if you will, surrounding Jesus where that stuff seems to appear a little more.
Yeah. But Samuel also was born of a mother, Hannah, who was barren and couldn't have kids and cried out to God. And then Hannah's womb was opened and she gave birth and she dedicated the child to the temple. He was trained and then became the prophet who anointed the king.
Yeah. He was with Eli and he heard the voice of God and Eli told him to go back and
His kids were also awful.
his kids were awful.
His kids were also awful.
What is it with these guys? These super religious kids, preachers'
I'll tell you
kids.
The preacher's kids. There you
So
go.
this is really strange because honestly, like I'm in the Master's Divinity program right now, and I'm really thinking of switching my career. And
Because you don't want your kids to be bad?
No, because I
was kidding.
think that no, but there's something to be said there because I think that when you are dedicated to God in that really intense and significant way, there's a certain level of attentiveness to like your physical life that gets kind of like put by the wayside.
I mean, doesn't Paul describe that?
Well, that's why Paul says people shouldn't get married,
Yeah.
which is interesting. And I'm going to bring this up like for just a second? Because you were saying something in the Second Olivet Discourse about like all scripture being perfect. But Paul says right then and there, I'm giving you a command that's not from the Lord, but just from me. So Paul says, I'm going to put my own personality into this text for just a second.
Yeah.
So I occasionally read Paul and go,
Because he said it once?
yep.
He was talking about marriage, and he was talking about not burning with passion.
He also says in Corinthians, just because I think I'm justified doesn't mean that I am. I won't know until the day I die if I'm fully justified.
We know that Paul was wrong. We know that Paul yelled and screamed at Barnabas because Mark had left him, and Mark wanted.
I opposed Peter to his face in Galatians. He sounds so sassy. I opposed him to his face.
That's right. but Peter later on in his book says, "Listen to Paul because he's pretty smart." Like,
Yeah. Yeah. But in any case, so back to that was a total sidetrack.
It's fun though.
But I know. It's just a whole lot. There's so much stuff that we could talk about. I listen to this podcast and I chime in all the time from the car.
It's like what people do with Jeopardy.
Yeah.
They're like, what is a sock? But it's her with like, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But like, but so for me, the reason I want to switch is because I consider my children my first ministry.
Of course, yes.
But why is it only? I wish that was a more typical and common response, because I see a lot of ministers and pastors and people that are involved in the ministry whose kids go this direction, because they were unable to, because I think culture and society has created an expectation for people in leadership and ministry. And I am not going to choose that expectation over my children. I'm just not.
No, and good. I think, you're number one. Like we talked about that during Mary McLeod's testimony. She and Sarita spoke back and forth, and she's raising her grandchildren, and she says they're my ministry. Like, yeah, because
she felt guilty about it. She felt guilty about because she mentioned Sarita, like, and the fact
she
that
had a big ministry. She used the word,
a big ministry, but she like that was the point of that. The point of that was that she felt bad about that.
Yeah, and that's why Sarita was like wrong.
She was trying to like.
It's exactly what you just described. That's what a lot of women feel like. But that's why I was talking about Paul. Paul was like, don't get married because if you do, you're going to have the cares of this world. And if you're going to do it properly, you're not going to be able to focus on God like a minister should. That's what he's trying to tell them.
So Paul's even saying, look, you're going to neglect one or the other.
Your kids are your ministry. Yeah. You have to think about that. Mm-hmm. But if you don't, then you don't have to worry yourself with those things.
Yeah.
So he could totally focus on the gospel.
Yeah. Paul also thought that but I personally, after like reading different things, I really think Paul thought that we didn't have more than like 30 or 40 years. I think he thought that
he was right.
I think that his understanding of what was about to go down was such that, he was right. He was speaking to, because then the temple was destroyed. Well, I'm not exactly sure when the temple was destroyed within the context of Paul's ministry.
87. So he comes in AD 38.
Okay.
And then,
temple's destroyed in AD 70.
So everything is forward-looking to Paul. So, and it's all imminent, and everybody is imminent. And so the destruction of the temple does matter. It absolutely does.
But I think that Paul's advice in that juncture is sort of like contained to that generation. But I think that if I were to take that advice and apply it to myself now, then it means I choose my children and not ministry, as per Paul's request.
I totally agree. Like
so
when we read,
pick one or the other. I've picked one. Well, I picked one first. I'm picking the other now. I did it. I did it cart before the horse.
Yeah.
Kids first, marriage second.
I feel like
straight to hell with me.
Oh, geez. If that was the case, my parents would be in hell.
I'm just making jokes, but that's it. Like, so it's put me in a position to really. So I think I'm going to change my master's to a master's of arts in social justice and equity, and just move into nonprofit sector instead of ministry for now. Because I was
so excited about the idea of you being a chaplain, to be honest with you.
I was too. And then the magical time I have with my daughter in the morning before she goes to daycare and in the afternoon I pick her up at 3, like it's my favorite time. Like there can't be a work that my soul is designed to do greater than that. I just can't see it.
Well, kudos to you for being a great mom. Well, I love it. That's great.
Yeah.
I waited a long time.
Well, that's good. I didn't. I didn't. As you can see, I've been this size for many, many years. All right, let's get back to John the
you saw
Baptist.
the
and
amount of
wrap
kids
this
he
up.
has.
But anyway, but back to that. But like again, I think that's partly why you see that God's plan manifested through these women, because the women were the ones that were capable of dedicating themselves to their children
Yeah.
in a way that the men couldn't necessarily do. I mean, I don't know.
Right. No, it's true. I mean,
Feminist
after honestly, Joseph disappears after the temple scene where Jesus is there as a child. You don't hear about him in his adult life.
Yeah, scholars think he probably died.
He either died or he didn't agree with what was going on and rolled out. You know, that was that doesn't make sense that Jesus' dad would do that. I personally feel like he fulfilled his duty, which was to protect the Christ child and get him to Egypt to keep Herod from killing him so he could get him back. Like that's what I feel like. And then to get him home from the temple, you know. But
I
anyway.
think he probably died. And I've also heard scholars argue that that's why Jesus' ministry started so late, because as the eldest firstborn son, he took on the role of provider for the family, likely after his dad died.
Right.
I mean, it wouldn't have been even remotely. First of all, he was older than Mary.
Yeah,
I mean, he was probably in his 30s when Mary was like 14.
that's right.
So first of all, he was older, and so
Which was acceptable.
right, totally.
Yeah.
but it's not that unusual to. I mean, like. It's not unusual to die early in the first century. It's not unusual to die first. You know,
Who is that,
like
Tom Jones?
before your wife. Yeah, I was just like,
Nice.
you know?
Very good.
So, you know, and there's also, I've heard people argue that Jesus might have been married at some point early in his life, but that maybe his wife died in childbirth or something like that, which was not uncommon.
Right.
You know,
That's a Dan Brown thing too, like the Mary Magdalene thing and the Holy Grail and all that stuff. You ever read that?
yeah, but
The
I mean,
Da Vinci Code?
I'm not talking about that. I think that's, I mean, whatever to that. But I'm saying like it's possible that was betrothed, and maybe, you know, it's possible that Jesus's ministry was, like you said, he rose into his ministry.
Yeah.
It's possible that his ministry was birthed and born out of a series of tragedies that left him with nothing else. It's possible.
Tiziano would like to make clear that this idea didn't arise from a Dan Brown novel.
Yeah, I would like to no copyright infringements
I don't.
up in here.
It's my opinion that he didn't, but not because of any man-woman thing. It's because I believe that we're the bride and he is the only husband that we'll ever have. And we're his only wife. That's kind of the way I've always thought of it. Not because of man-woman. Like, I wouldn't have minded if Jesus was married. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
But I just feel like that was
Or he might
the
have been,
role.
like I said, he might have been betrothed. Like, for example, Mary was betrothed to Joseph for a period of time. She got pregnant during the betrothal period.
Yeah.
So it's possible that Jesus had a whole life that he was going to have, and a series of tragedies put him in this position to where he had nothing left to lose.
Yeah.
But I don't know, because he was fully God and fully man. And those are whatever. I don't have that's not
no
a hill I'm
different
going
than
to
me
die on or
saying that-
anything. It's
Yeah.
just like a
Yeah.
thing I've thought of.
It's like me talking about the space-time continuum, super light, you know, alien spaceman guy
Yeah.
on the top of the mountain. I mean, that's just all speculation. We're just thinking out loud. I mean,
he went through puberty. You got two men in the room, know what that's like, don't you?
I sure do.
That's true.
I mean, he went through puberty. Like we forget that.
I don't even think that's what she was referring to.
It certainly wasn't. But
I know.
But poor Rick's over here trying to like keep it PG.
I'm keeping it clean,
I
y'all.
know. But to me, these are the things that are important to talk about, because again, that goes back to low Christology, high Christology.
Yeah.
The thing that draws me towards Jesus like a moth to flame, and that I cannot ever leave behind no matter what, is that he knows what it's like to be me.
Yes.
And he knows what it's like to be me because he lived in a body that went through everything my body's going through except for pregnancy. Okay. Thank you, Lord Jesus,
For
your
giving you-
sympathy, but you ain't got no empathy for this.
Thank
Anyways,
you for giving me all
yeah.
the excuses
he
about.
knows nothing about breastfeeding. But that's the thing. Like, that to me is what I love. I love his humanity. I love that he wept. I love that he felt. You know, I love that he suffered along with me.
Well, it's one of those things. It comes back to what's her head that does the counseling for the drugs. Sorry, names me bad, don't work. But like, I can't imagine that industry. A lot of it is staffed by people that used to be
In
addicts.
recovery. Yeah.
In recovery, because there is no way, if you have not had a problem with addiction, you cannot appreciate what those people are going through, because you're going to have some dumbass idea in your head, like they're just weak-willed, which is such a wildly privileged and incorrect thing that people that have not had those sorts of problems.
And I'll never know, right? Like I'm not privy to like when Jesus was born and what it felt like to be. I mean, like we have this information, John leaping in the womb, like the Spirit was with him from the beginning. Like I don't have privy to that. Like whether or not people have suggested that when he died on the cross and he took all of our sins, like that, like he everyone's life flashed before his eyes and he felt everything that everybody had ever done at that moment, or whatever. That's all theory. It's all theory. We don't know.
Yeah.
But I enjoy the thought of Jesus going from birth to 30 and experiencing all the wretchedness of puberty and like learning he was a carpenter, means he had to be an apprentice somewhere, means he had to screw up, means he had to learn the hard way at some point. I like that.
Because you get to appreciate the position of humanity.
It makes me happy.
Yeah.
It makes me feel connected to him rather than him like being born and never making a mistake and being sinless. I think that has more to do with like on a spiritual level, sinless.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean he didn't experience what we went through. It doesn't mean he didn't learn.
Right.
Well,
let's wrap up this episode. We've got a hard stop in 4 minutes. And
did we even get to any of the stuff that was in did we really even cover this?
we did.
We did? Okay.
You can always try again.
Oh man, I feel like I just
Oh, no.
No, this was great.
Okay.
I mean, we read a lot of scripture. We talked a lot about John the
It's
Baptist
fine.
and all of the...
I'll throw it out. It's no problem.
No,
Okay.
don't throw it out. Keep it all in there. And listen,
kidding.
What was it? Sarita said that her favorite part was to go back through all the episodes and hear the
she
stuff you
didn't
put
know
at the
that
end.
there was stuff after the end on a lot of them.
Oh, yeah.
It's like the hidden track. He
Yeah.
puts them there. They've been there from the very beginning.
Yeah, but
And
you got to stick around.
most people don't know, but they're there. So hang around to the end of this one, and you're going to hear a lot of fart noises. No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah. I did
No, he's
burp
not.
quietly once, but nobody heard me.
Oh, maybe if I really go
It
through
was a
the audio,
really
I can pull it
quiet
out.
burp. Yeah, it was a really quiet one.
Well, I have one other question in regard to John the Baptist I wanted to ask you. So we all know how he died,
Got
right?
his head cut off.
That's correct. And we all know why.
Yeah, because what's-her-face wanted him dead because he was always saying, hey, you're not supposed to be married to your sister. And so her daughter, Salome, did like a sexy dance for Herod. And he was like, what do you want for your birthday, sweetheart? And she was like, I want John the Baptist's head on a platter. and Herod was like,
She laughed
and
like that.
Herod was like, well, she didn't want it. She was a puppet. Her mom, Herodias.
Herodias, yeah.
Herodias is the one told her to do it. So poor kid was like 16. She didn't even know she was a pawn, right? But that's what she said. And Herod was like, oh, crap. I don't want to do that.
We told this story to Andy once before, and he's like, man, he was willing to give up a third of the kingdom. She should have just taught dance lessons.
Yeah. I'm
Ruin
real curious.
birthdays
I've never
for every
seen like
Jehovah's
the
Witness.
fan dance. I don't know what she did. But yeah, so he had to go get her John's head on a plate and gave it to her mom. Poor John.
Well, the thing I wanted to bring up was, why do you think that John decided to get out from the Jordan River and to start heading in to talk to King Herod about his infidelities? Why does that matter so much? You ever thought of that?
No, I haven't.
So I have a
Except-
question for you.
Yeah.
You said it earlier. I don't know if you realized it.
Well, I was going to say, except that was he was Elijah also was constantly talking trash to Jezebel, and that Elijah kind of went out of his way to make sure Jezebel knew that she wasn't doing what was right, and so it's possible that he had an unction in his spirit to again follow in the spirit and power of Elijah and go
Bam!
talk smack to Herodias.
Thank you.
That's what.
Thank you. You just nailed it.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
And that's what that's what a priest does for a king.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
See?
That is what priests and prophets did. Because when Israel started having a monarchy, you start seeing this real rise in prophetic literature. You don't have any prophetic literature at all contained in the Hebrew Bible before the monarchy.
Right.
Now, there's mentions of prophets, but the prophetic literature, everything that's written down and controlled, it's because they started keeping annals of the king once there was a kingship.
She said the word right.
Yes, she
Annals.
did.
Yeah, it's annals. You guys
I
are
said in the
children.
annals of
I know.
history.
I listened to that episode. Yeah.
We had to get Google to tell us.
Annals. Anyway, so they had to start keeping track of stuff. And so that's when you start seeing all these, and people had to learn to write. People had to be paid to have a job to sit around and record stuff. I mean, like you couldn't afford to do that. You had to go in the fields and work. And so we start seeing a rise in like this prophetic literature and in these schools of prophetic thought because they also were important to the king. And kings were prophets. Prophets were constantly telling kings what they were doing wrong. So John was probably just continuing to fulfill his destiny as a prophet, which was to call out to the king and queen, yo,
And he
y'all
did.
ain't doing right.
And he did.
And he got his head cut off for it.
That's right.
Elijah would have too if he hadn't just, disappeared into thin air.
That's exactly right.
Jezebel was after him.
She sure was. He was like, he just called the fire down from heaven when they saw this amazing thing and killed 450 prophets.
Yeah.
And he was still afraid of Jezebel.
Yeah. Huh. Yeah. She was a bad bee. Although I love how she died because Elijah gives her this terrible prophecy that the dogs are going to eat her body, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah, drink her blood.
And so when the city's overthrown and Ahab is about to be usurped and, they come up to her tower and she gets dressed all in her finery and she puts on all of her makeup and she's like, I'm ready.
Yeah, she does. Like Games of Thronesy, bro.
She does.
Yeah.
Like there's something about that. Like, I mean, obviously Jezebel gets a bad rap, but two things. Number one, she wasn't Jewish. She wasn't from Israel.
No.
Ahab shouldn't have married her in the first place. He was the one who was wrong, not her.
Right.
So she was just doing what her culture and religion taught her to do.
Yep.
So she, I mean, not for nothing. She did crappy crap.
Well,
and
let's think about it. She was the reason why Ahab married her. When they married,
political alliance.
Thank you. So she was powerful. God. So she trusted her God, and they were doing fine. So she was actually trying to help Ahab.
Yeah.
But she was wicked, and so when we know from this side, we understand the wickedness.
Yeah, or at least how the story was told.
So tell him how she died. Tell him.
She gets tossed out the window. Just pitched out the window. Boop.
Defenestrated, some would say.
And then the dogs, then they say that they left her body there until she was the dogs came and picked her up.
Wow. So she gets
Super
real
gross.
pretty and then somebody chucks her out a window.
Yeah, but she faced her fate with
Oh no,
pride,
I get that part.
Yeah,
in my head, I'm thinking about a woman
the dogs were
fully made up.
Is this Revlon?
Yeah.
Maybe it's Maybelline.
I'm thinking
How about that one?
A woman in a dress fully made up and one guy with a hand on a leg and an arm just giving her the one,
heave-ho, yeah.
Two.
Yeah.
That was if you could just see Andy's and they're actually literally doing it.
Yeah,
Like
her
doing
death
the whole
is described
swinging
really beautifully.
the arms.
But I mean, I don't know. Her name just becomes an epithet for evil throughout the rest of the course of history.
Yeah.
But when God delivers, when God says, "You are about to go into this land. I'm going to deliver these people into your hands. Your sons should not marry their daughters, and their daughters should not marry your sons." But for some reason, it's always the foreign women that are causing the downfall instead of no. It was them Israelite men who knew better and did it anyway.
Mm-hmm.
These girls had nothing to do with it. You think they had any power at all? Their daddies were using them like pawns.
Yeah.
But yet somehow.
Watch what happens whenever Esther marries a Persian king. Saves all of her people.
But that's fine.
It's in reverse, though.
And Ruth.
Yeah. It's with Boaz and the kinsman redeemer.
And they never let her get over the fact that she's a Moabite. She's Ruth the Moabite the entire time.
That's okay to know that because that's in Christ's lineage.
It is exactly. But
so Christ had Gentile blood inside his lineage.
But that's why everybody needs to realize that. God
and
throughout
Rahab
the entire
harlot.
history was constant. I love
But she's called the harlot forever.
Forever. For the rest of time. Do you know? But I mean,
calling Andy.
I'm a little bit of a process
Andy the jerk,
theologian.
The jerk.
I'm kind of a process theologian. Where I think that God met people where they were. And then as people were able to understand more and grow more and stuff, then God was able to be okay, because really, so God's don't marry the Moabites unless you're this one. That's fine.
Okay. I'm sorry. Can you say I'm kind of a process theologian? Again, the same way you said it, but played up a little more because it was amazing.
I don't know how I did it. Listen, I'm just in the moment.
I know,
That
right?
was so good.
Okay,
because you did it she did this thing where she'd put her hand over her head and then she kind of went Valley Girl. I know her. I know this was intentional.
I'm kind of a process theologian.
That's it.
Yeah,
See, that's what I was hoping for.
I didn't even realize I did it.
That's what you did. You just did it at 30%. But it was a thing. I was just that was super funny and it was too subtle.
Yeah.
Too fun.
I am kind of a process theologian. So it's interesting because you see God do these things. Don't do this thing. And then someone does it and God's oh, but that was fine. Don't eat the consecrated bread. But then David and his men eat the consecrated bread. I mean, so the whole point, even from the beginning is, I'm making all these rules and laws and you guys are gonna break them.
Yeah.
And there's gonna be some consequences when you do break those laws, and you will learn why I made those laws in the first place. But there's always going to be an exception to the rule, because my entire goal is to make one big, great exception to the rule, which is that only Jews can love me. my entire goal is to make one big, huge exception for the whole wide world to the rule. So I'm giving you examples throughout the history of the Bible of this is the rule, and then examples of, but you can break it and it's fine.
Yeah. Interesting. Never thought of it that way, but that's true. I mean, I see that. All right. I think that's it. That was wonderful. I love having you on the show because you talk more than me, and this is what I need. I need it. And I learned so much today. Thank you.
I learned so much when I listened to the show. I've thought about the Olivet Discourse in that way, and we've talked about that before.
Yeah.
Because I've suspected, I'm like, I don't know, it sounds more like he's talking about the destruction of the temple. But I've never had it being, I've never spent the time to like dig into it the way that you did. And so there were several moments in the car where I was like, I know. Yeah, that's what I said, you know? Like,
yeah, I mean, you know, I hadn't raised the flag all the way up, but I definitely, I'm still looking into it. I mean, John the Baptist even says, you know, who warned you of the wrath to come? And the axe is laid at the tree, and he's the Elijah. That means that they were in the last days.
They were in the last days, right.
So the last days of what? The last days of this, you know,
that era.
The Commonwealth of Israel of its time of what it was, you know? But anyway. Well, I have one joke. I have to tell it. So you've heard my Larry the 15th Apostle jokes? Have you heard any of them?
I don't know. I don't think so.
She's blocked him out.
Yeah, so there's these Larry the 15th Apostles at the pearly gates, and he's just going through the book, and there's, you know, a big line of people, and he's just going through them, you know, and this first lady comes up to him, and he says, tell me what you did, you know, in life. I need to know whether I can let you in or not. And she goes, well, I was a nurse, and I worked in the inner city, and I volunteered. And I did it for over 30 years, and I helped save countless lives. And he goes, oh, that's good. He's like, yeah, go on in. So she goes in. And so the next woman comes up, and he's like, so how about you? And she's like, funny enough, I was a nurse too, but I was a missionary. I went into the deepest, darkest recesses of Africa, and I worked with these tribes that didn't have medications, and I helped save countless lives. I did that for almost 20 years. And he was like, that's amazing. Yeah, go on in. So this third lady comes up, and he goes, so what did you do? And she goes, well, strangely enough, like, I'm not a nurse, but I did work in health insurance. And he was like, oh, he said, that's great to know. She's like, in fact, I worked on an HMO. We helped countless families. And he goes, oh, okay, well, go on in. She's like, really? And he goes, she was like, that really? That was easy. He's like, yeah, that's okay. You can stay in there for 3 days.
Oh.
Nice.
I like that one.
Nice.
Yeah, if you've ever been kicked out of a hospital because your insurance has run out, you know,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah, it sucked. Because like when I was a kid, parents could stay in the hospital for 2, 3, maybe even a week. But then, you know, whenever I started having kids, it was like 24 hours.
Yeah, get out.
Get that vagina sewn. Get out of here.
Get out. Bruh.
And I was like, I don't even have a vagina. No, I'm just kidding.
Dude, no, it's for real. Like, my kid was premature. You know what I mean? She was like in the NICU for 7 days. You
were out.
I was out of my ear, right? They were like, you're fine, get out. You know, like, and it was COVID, so they didn't let us stay there together. So they usually have these like special rooms that if you are a family of a kid on the NICU floor, like you can go stay in like these rooms, you know? But they were like, all that was shut down. So Dylan and I were doing this like enormously complicated. And at the same time, I'm also going through everything that my body's going through, but I'm separated from my baby.
Oh, that's awful.
It was, I don't want to say nightmare because I feel like that's like, based on what so many other mothers and parents and families that I saw in the NICU suffered, I'm not even going to get in.
Right.
I'm not even going to dare claim that word, you know? But it was so hard. It was very challenging.
Yeah.
It was so hard. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine.
They're like, you.
Get out of here. So that lady got
done.
3 days in heaven. That's all she got. And then she was, and then she was like, then what? And he was like, sounds like hell, doesn't it?
Oh.
See? Anyway. Tiziana,
Nice
thank you
tag.
so much for being on the show.
Thank you for having me. It was so fun.
Will you keep coming back?
Oh, I would love to come back. You just have to do it in the morning.
Yeah. Let's just keep throwing ideas out, Andy. And I'm so glad because Andy, he invited you. And I was hoping Uncle AJ would be here so you could meet him because I wanted you to invite him to your church. Oh. AJ, if you hear this episode. So anyway. Well, thanks so much for being on the show, Tiziana, and we'll do it again. Andy, have a great time. Enjoy your day, and we'll talk to you all next time on the Burros of Berea.
Woo. The Midwest, they don't call, or maybe it's just this one. My friend used to live in Michigan. They don't, and he was like, I can talk about the water fountain over there. And the guy was like, what? He's like, yeah, I'm not going to drink from the water fountain because it looks really gross. And the guy was like, the bubbler?
Yeah, the bubbler. I've heard that.
And I was like, it was like, it's so weird how we have different regional words.
No idea. Bubbler, huh? I'm going to raise your mic, TZ.
I thought, raise it up. Do you want me to do it?
I'm going to do it from the center. Or maybe, yeah.
Oh, okay.
That's better.
Yeah. Yeah, or like, what do you call a warm knitted hat you wear in the winter?
Toboggan.
Yeah, we grew up calling them beanies.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up, so I was...
Toque.
I'm from Maine.
You call them a toque?
Toques. They're toques. Oh. Kristen calls them a toboggan. Like, I've heard.
That's what I call it.
Yeah, you know what that is?
It's a sled.
Yeah, it's not a hat.
Everybody knows that.
It is a hat.
Except for Kristen.
No, it's not.
Up north.
Everybody knows that.
You're
except
not
for Kristen.
hearing me.
When you go sledding, you put on your toboggan in Maine.
It's toque. We're upstate New York, very near
Toque.
Canada.
Where did that even
Toque.
come from?
Probably French, knowing the area.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah.
I love how you had like a real answer.
French. Well, we're so near French Canada.
Yeah, that'll
Canada.
do it.
I say
do
that word just
all
like
the
that.
time. I do it all the time.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of cultural stuff there from that culture because it was like a logging town, and they came down to be employed.
God,
Special people, French Canadians.
Speaking of Canada, and I know how you feel about them, but Kids in the Hall has a new season.
What?
Yeah, that's amazing.
Kids in the Hall
I need
has
to
a new
see
season.
that. Brain
Like on
Candy is
what?
still one of the better, but also more disturbing things I've ever seen in my life.
Brain Candy?
That's a movie they did.
Oh, golly. Dylan had never seen Kids in the Hall, obviously, but
because he was a child.
He's 9.5. He wasn't even born. So I wasn't really. I mean, I was 4. Kids in the Hall's first season was 1985 or something like that.
Yeah.
I watched it in repeat.
But I watched it in repeat.
Yeah.
But it was popular for a decade after that. By the time Dylan came along, it was like in living color was what was going on.
Sure.
But we watched the first season of that stuff. It is so racist. Like they're in blackface and everything.
Is it?
Like,
okay, so I know blackface is a no, and it's not like I'm raging to go out and get in some blackface. But is it racist?
No. No, it's not. But by today's standards.
By today's
yeah, they're not trying to be racist. But,
right. It's just they have a white.
Yeah.
See, that's one of those things where I don't feel like I get it because of its use, right? But particular instances of it, not necessarily racist.
Right.
But I understand why, because historically, absolutely.
Yeah.
Oh, look at Koopy and Ollie. You guys
Hi,
are so
buddy.
clean.
I know.
There. Now you're going to get some flaming emails because I said blackface isn't de facto racist. So wait
We're
till you
not
see how that
recording
goes.
right now.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, this will go at the back.
Oh, don't do that.
Why?
Because I didn't know.
It's our people's
You
I
didn't say
wasn't
anything wrong.
prepared.
I'm the
Okay.
only person that said anything.
Well, yeah, but I mean,
and once
like
again, I want to lay this down. I get it.
Yeah, oh, yeah.
Historically, it has been used by assholes to be demeaning to an entire people.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Watch Birth of a Nation.
Oh, yeah,
I mean,
precisely.
there's a horrible use of blackface.
I just want to double down on that one because
You'll need to.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. But anyway, watching.
But is
Kids
it
in the Hall.
racist if they're from Canada? I mean,
different cultures have different views of it because they've had different things happen.
They have a different historical
Right.
relationship to
To-
slavery.
were there slaves in
Yeah.
Canada?
and
Well-
to the global slave trade.
Well,
you know.
yeah, or just even the use of blackface, right? If they didn't, if it wasn't all like mammy and like
Right.
derogatory, or at least not the majority of it, like it was here,
Right.
Then they have a different relationship to the practice. It in some
Yeah.
places it's just costume,
Right, right.
Because it doesn't have the history that it has here,
Right.
So
That's, I know that's possible, and none of it was really, nothing was derogatory, towards black people.
that's what I
or
was
whatever.
saying. I was like, they probably didn't mean it.
No.
There was probably not a thing happening intentionally there. It's just
Yeah.
that, you look
Yeah.
at it and now it's like blackface and you're like, oh, nobody.
It's like, this
You
is the
cannot.
character I want to play, so I'm
Right.
going to do this,
Yeah.
But it was like,
Of course,
me
I
and
guess
Dylan
I'd
were
have to
watching
see
it.
it.
We
You
were
never
like,
know with that stuff,
oh, you
but-
should, just for fun. Because me
Yeah.
and Dylan were like, oh, this would not fly. These
Nope.
guys would be in so much trouble. They would be canceled. So we're really excited to watch the new season, but we wanted to catch up on the
it's
old
an
one first.
interesting
Worthwhile.
thing though, because like if you watch The Office, there's a lot of like Kevin laughing at the fact that Oscar's gay. Like he laughs throughout it's like 2 seasons of laughter, and you wouldn't think that would fly today, but it's still an incredibly popular show. Like it is huge.
Yeah.
You know, more people. I think it's one of the highest watched shows on Peacock, and it definitely was on Netflix.
I was literally thinking about this the other day. The thing about The Office, like people will see something and misrepresent it because they'll be triggered by the fact that there's like a particular thing. But the thing about The Office is the butt of the joke is never the gay person or like Stanley or Oscar. They're not the butt of those jokes. The butt of the joke is in The Office is the person telling it.
Yes.
Yeah.
The joke
The
is
stupidity.
The joke is that only a fucking rube would say this.
Yes.
So it's not.
Yeah.
So the joke is on the person telling it, and
Right.
that's
why it
what
makes
gives
it okay.
a little bit. That what gives it a clear. It's the intended target of the joke.
Yeah.
And some people wouldn't necessarily understand that, but those people would be pretty dumb.
Right.
I don't know how long that's going to last. I mean, the way comedy's being attacked, and you know.
Like here's the deal. You know what? Whatever. If you're funny and you're not being an asshole, you'll get away with it. But if you're being an asshole or you're not funny,
you're in trouble.
You're going to get the door slammed on your foot. But most of these people that are really getting in trouble that actually get canceled, they've done something genuinely dumb. It's not like it's not like funny people with like telling stories about, you know, like trans people or something. It's people that are mocking them or whatever in the jokes. I don't see it. I see or when you're not funny, like
if you're just not funny.
If you're not funny but I don't see it.
Do you think that Dave Chappelle is funny?
Yeah, he is. Although I don't agree with everything. That last special and the special before, there's parts of it that are a little cringy to me, but damn, he's good.
But see, the thing is, like you just said, he goes like, look, I don't have a problem with trans people.
Yeah.
Go be trans. Like, go about it. I just have to say, coming from my perspective, you're in a quandary. You know, it's like this is a pretty funny place that you're in. You know, you're.
I will say, for the record, I don't know why everybody doesn't get this. Dave Chappelle's in the very latest special, his entire bit about that trans person he knew. That's just I know a black dude bit.
Yeah.
I'm not racist. I know a black dude. That's that whole bit.
I get it.
It's not without merit, and there's a point to that bit that I think he's attempting to make because I think he's working with his own ability to digest like transness. I don't think he's like scared or whatever. I don't think he's a transphobe, but I do think he's working on his ability to accept a thing that was not probably acceptable to him as a child. I see that in him, but it's still the I know a black dude story. When a black
it is and it isn't, because the connection between him and that trans person was the comedy. That's what gave them the relationship where they spoke was about the comedy. You know, it's an art form. It's something that they agreed on.
That's always the end, right? I mean, you need to find something about a group of people you don't like that you do like, that one person, and you find an aspect of that person that you like, and you're into understanding writ large. Yeah. But that's always the story. The story is always, you know.
Yeah, I laugh. I just laugh at all of it.
I hear what you're saying. I read that special, and of course, no one can see. I pointed to Andy. I hear you. I read that special as the dissection of a movement, because Dave Chappelle's coming from, you know, a movement of equality amongst black people, whereas the trans community, of course, is coming at the conversation from a place of equity for trans people.
I kind of wasn't addressing that aspect, but that's a whole thing. Yeah.
So what I read, when I watched that special, I saw Dave Chappelle talking about coalition building amongst movements, which is, you know, is a whole other larger discussion. For example, the women's rights movement was fractured because white women could not make space for black women to have their share and their space within that conversation. So there was an opportunity for missed coalition building in that moment between women who were white and women who were black to come together on their shared experience. And I think what Dave Chappelle's trying to get at, and again, like with his jokes and his pointing his fingers and this and that, you know, because he makes all these jokes about how that movement's going so much better than the black movement. I think he's trying to make jokes because he's trying to point out the struggle between these two social movements and their struggle to create a healthy coalition building bridge. And he uses his relationship with this trans person as a way to say, this was me using comedy as a bridge, you know, coming as a Black man, her coming from it as a trans woman. Comedy was our bridge, and we were able to build a relationship and build a coalition. But when she defended that in public, her own community drug her so much that she killed herself, and that is on that community. So I think he's trying to talk in specific terms about the broader issue of equity movements and coalition building in and amongst equity movements, and the maybe the sorrow he feels or experiences when, in his experience, not obviously you can't paint an entire movement in one brush, but his personal experience with, you know, the trans community for him has been a misfire in that there hasn't been that opportunity to coalition build for equality because he is also oppressed as a Black man, that kind of thing. That's what I read it as.
I mean, that's the intended read. Yeah. That's the intended read. And I can't explain, you know, backlash, you know, and it's one of those things. Here's the thing about that sort of backlash that person had. I don't even remember if they were trans man or woman. Trans woman had is, you know, that wasn't 10,000 angry trans people. It was like 4 angry trans people and 5 angry white cis men or women. Well, not really 5, but you know, like the total, that was way deflated. But the total number of people that were harrowing that person, probably not that many. You know what I mean? Like, so the way to say the entire community bullied that person until they killed themselves is just, I don't like that because it's categorically untrue. And there would have been enough people to get you to kill yourself is enough. And it's not 4,000. You know what I mean? Especially if you're vulnerable, which they probably were.
Yeah, it just takes one.
I wasn't a part, so I wasn't there for that part, you know? And so all I know was what I saw in the special. It would be like an archival, you know, undertaking to go back to Twitter and like reread what was happening at that time.
My point is not, did she get bullied?
Yeah.
Or, you know, or was it overwhelming? Because I know that that's true. Absolutely, she was bullied and it was overwhelming. But it's not her experience that I'm talking about. It's the way of speaking about it that's like the entire community turned on her. That is bullshit.
Well, and that's what I was saying. Like,
happens.
You can't just paint a wide brush on an entire community. But it'd be an interesting Google search, you know, trans folks in support of Dave Chappelle.
Well, not that. I'm not worried about trans folks in support of Dave Chappelle. I'm worried about who and how many people were bullying that person.
But they were bullying that person for being in support of Dave Chappelle.
But
what I'm curious about. You know what I mean?
But I'm not curious about that, about Dave Chappelle.
Right.
I'm curious about the actual makeup of people that were bullying her. But it's not even, that's not even the point. The point is that saying the community bullied her until she killed herself, that's, you can't just lay that at the feet of the air quote community. That's horseshit. And I don't even need to go look at Twitter to know that it wasn't literally the entire trans community.
I can tell you from personal experience, because I had, and I don't know if you even know this, but I had this one meme. Remember the one meme sent to me was the turd?
Yeah.
Right? And we talked
Everybody
about it
that
across
listens
like 4
knows it because this
podcasts.
is like the 5th time.
Exactly. And so what I'm saying is one person did something that was, just off color, funny. But I remember, like, when I saw it, I thought it
colors your perception of everything.
What bothered me was I thought, why won't you just listen? Like, just fine. You're mad because I paid for advertisement. Well, get mad at Facebook or Instagram for allowing advertisements to come across your feed. It's not my problem. I'm paying Instagram and Facebook. This woman says what she says. And so I'm like, all right. And then she, at the end of her argument, I'm an atheist. So, and I'm like, if you'd have just, fine. I just then listen to our show because, it's interesting. But
There's
anyway,
no way to know.
But my point was that was one person, and I talked about it over 5 episodes.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying, too.
Imagine the trans woman who, how she felt.
She might have 100 people.
Yeah.
Like,
but 5 could have done her that day.
But 5 could have done her that day. That's also true.
That's it. Yeah. I mean, it like you said, it depends on the moment.
Yeah.
And anyway.
So Oh yeah.
Are you doing research?
No,
we should
said
probably
you said
turn
the
this
word
corner.
meme.
TZ
Yeah.
has a hard out at 12, which is still not a
yeah.
problem, but we should
I have
probably
to go
turn
get a
this
marriage
corner.
license
Hey,
because we're getting married on Monday.
That's so cool. So are you changing your name? Mm-mm. You're keeping your name?
Yes.
So you're still going to be called Tiziana?
This nice. Yeah. I am.
That's your one, Rick.
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
I got a great one today. No, I don't.
No,
yeah, that's got one.
you
but-
said meme, and there's this meme that one of my professors had posted once about the Synoptic Gospels, and literally no one I know in my life would get it but you, Rick. And so I thought it would be funny if I could find it.
Yeah.
But so I fell down a bit of a rabbit hole here because I'm like, who did I send? There was my sister thought it was funny because she's the only other person that like reads the Bible to the degree that I do. But it was just so funny, and I wonder if I could find it. I bet I could if I just scrolled. Maybe I can't. Anyway, I'll
You
see if
can
I
find
can
it later. If
I'll
you find it
text
later,
to
send
you.
it to me. Yeah.
It was super funny.
You ready to fire this thing off?
Yes,
Oh yeah, let me go just
for sure.
unsleep the computer screen.
Okay. So you're going to stay Severse?
Yeah, I
Okay.
mean, first of all,
I don't care. I just didn't want to say something on the show, be like, so what's your last name going to be next time? Like, I'm not going to do that, right?
My name's gonna be Severse.
So when Kristen and I had the same discussion, she was like, "You want me to be Kristen Bishop?" She was like, "No." It's like Kristen Bishop.
Yeah.
So
It doesn't feel like myself, you know?
yeah.
Tiziana Severse sounds one way. Tiziana Walker sounds weird. I mean, that's like if you have somebody whose name is like, you know, Adajembe Smith. You know what I mean? Like it just doesn't feel culturally right to take the Severse part away because it's like I have this like super Italian name and this
that's
like French Italian last
exactly
name. Yeah.
Kristen's thing. Exactly. That's
Yeah.
basically. Also, she just doesn't. I feel like she didn't say this, but she said it. She feels like it's like too bubbly a name or something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So
Yeah, it does. I have several, you know, on the hair. I went through a period of time where I felt like I had several female clients that had a unique cultural heritage and background that was lost to them in some ways when they married their white American husbands. And so they've been reclaiming their maiden names or their mother's maiden names as an effort to highlight and recapture their own cultural uniqueness and their own heritage. And I'm like, yeah, totally. Dylan doesn't care either. He's not like invested in that.
I was born out of wedlock up in Michigan.
So are all of my kids.
My parents were sinners, just like you, Tiziana.
Yeah,
So-
just like me.
no, but seriously, so in Michigan, they didn't allow you. I was not allowed to take my father's name. I had to take my mother's name in Michigan, which is a weird law because they weren't married. So I was born Waycaster. So my name was Ricky Waycaster. And then they changed my name right before I graduated. So funny enough, when you come to North Carolina and you go to school, you can just say whatever name you want and they put it down. I didn't have to prove any like birth certificate or anything.
really?
No.
that's probably not true anymore. I
Well, I don't know, not anymore, but back then. So I went through school as Welch all the way through high school. But then when I was going to graduate, they would not put Welch on my diploma because it
so
wasn't
you
on
had
my
to
birth
legally
certificate.
change it so
my
you could put it on your diploma.
Yep. So my parents legally changed my name so that I could get it on my diploma.
Well, we gave Aurora my last name as a middle name and then Dylan's last name. So she has two middle names, Aurora Valentine Severse Walker. So her name is Aurora Walker in theory, but she has two middle names. On her social security card, it's Aurora V.S. Walker.
Yeah, I was curious if you're going to have your kids hyphenate.
Yeah, and that's what we'll do with this one too, likely. You know, hyphenating seems
It's the-
extra.
yeah, it's the
and I mean,
compromise.
and I just, you know, it's still part of a tradition that, you know, the male line needs to be preserved. That's the one that's important. You know, like why
Because
you would
he's the
name your
king.
kid. Yeah, why you would give, you know, I as an unwed woman would give my child that I gave birth to somebody else's last name. You know, like there's a certain, but on the other hand, there's no debate about whose baby it is if it came out of my body. But
Right,
there might
yeah.
be a debate about paternity.
Parental
So then you
lineage.
give the,
Oh, yeah.
but you know, so there's an argument for
Never
that. Like
occurred
that's
to me
how
that
he
that
can
could be a
have
part
like
of it.
some legal right to her. You know, so
Yeah.
you know, we went ahead and did that. You know, but I mean, of course, you just take one look at that baby and you know exactly who her papa is. I tell you what, I did all the work, literally all the work. His work lasted about 5 minutes, but I did all the rest of the work.
Well, I'm going
And-
to tell you something. You got to teach your kids
And
this.
then, yeah,
So-
thank you. But then she pops out looking exactly like her daddy. I was like, how dare you?
Today is my birthday.
Oh, happy
birthday.
birthday.
Feel free to sing later. You.
Oh, I absolutely.
I like how he just pointed strongly at Tiziana.
I 100% will.
I got a lot of comments about your singing in your
I'm sure.
testimony.
Yeah.
A lot.
That wasn't even that good.
Listen, we also talked about you guys recording and bringing the kids and doing that song someday.
I've been
Don't worry
having.
about
Between
it.
the two of us, we are a tragic schedule
You have
catastrophe.
the next baby that looks like you. Everything's cool,
Yeah.
and then we'll do it then.
The challenge with it all too is that first of all, two things. Number one, I realized that my chorus, like my back, it sounds exactly like this other song called "My God Fights for Me" that I didn't realize was stuck in the back of my brain. So now I'm like mad and I don't want to record it.
Oh.
But because this happened I was at church. We have youth night every other Thursday. So I was at church last Thursday and the kids were working on art projects. So I was like, oh, let's listen to some music. And I put some music on and the song came on and the kids started singing My Roots. And I was like, wait a minute, what? And then I realized that this
That's a
song,
bummer.
oh my goodness.
Yeah.
The song's called My God Fights for Me. It's a super sick song. The melody's not at all the same.
Oh, okay,
but-
then who gives a crap?
But they
That's all
literally
that matters.
go,
So what? If the
I'm like, it sounds
tempo's right
exactly
and
like
it's
my song.
almost in the right key, that's close enough for people to sing along. That's nothing. That's why mashups exist.
When you were
Okay, well,
singing
that's
it,
true.
Yeah, that's nothing.
when you were singing it, it felt like a Negro spiritual. That's what it felt like to me.
What? Yeah, which is probably why
And
Pastor
so
wanted to do it in the Black
that's
History Month presentation.
gonna.
Yeah, that's going to come through.
I,
But
I
that
thought
being
you
said,
meant like the timing and the melody.
no,
that
no,
would
no.
matter.
Yeah.
No, mine's different. But that being said, the other part of it is that, I talked to my pastor about it and he was like, I'd really love to make this a collaboration between the worship team and the kids. And that's and then that turns into a whole other scheduling nightmare
That's
that I've been struggling with.
That doesn't bother me, but it is like a long term.
It might be one of those things
it's a
where
big
we
thing.
just have to because we have to just get other musicians, just to hire studio guns to come in and do it, and then take the music to
Sure.
my current
That's
music
reasonable.
pastor and
Yeah.
say, here, can you teach the choir this song? And then we'll just have Andy come down. It'll take you guys 2 seconds to learn it, and we'll come down and we'll
Yeah.
do it. That
That's
might
smart.
be the way to do it because
The
trying
only
to
thing
coordinate.
is, can we get enough headphones or sound? How big is the choir? Maybe we could do it
oh,
in
the
like
choir has like
packs
4
of-
people.
Oh, okay.
No,
That's
no.
problem.
Okay, sorry. Worship team.
Worship team.
Our
okay.
church has moved from a choir model to a worship team model.
Okay, well, that's fine. I
yeah.
certainly have 4 sets of headphones.
Yeah, which I don't know if you've ever had the blessed opportunity to be a part of a big part of a congregation where there's like a traditional choir.
I've been in both.
Yeah, it's awesome. But a traditional black choir, like doing their thing in their matching robes.
Never
and
been a
stuff.
part of a black choir, but I've never even actually witnessed it in real life.
I hesitated to throw the black in there because I always
difference.
feel bad describing, but there's a big difference.
There's a difference. Let's
And
be
when
real.
we've
I
had
watch television.
like awesome, like we have, because I've been in my church for 4 years, so I've seen a lot and done a lot and traveled and been a part of a lot of stuff. And and like a traditional black choir dressed up in their robes with like the choir director and like doing their thing is like really powerful and really moving. But you need bodies,
Sure.
and we've moved over, and a lot of churches are moving over to a worship team model because it's just easier for scheduling.
Sure, absolutely.
Everyone's lives have gotten so complicated and so busy. It's
Yeah.
a lot easier to schedule 6 people on a Wednesday afternoon than it is to schedule 35.
Yeah.
you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
even imagine.
Yeah, so I think just for simplicity's sake.
Well, I'm
people are moving
gonna
over.
rein this back in.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
gonna
Oh,
just
yeah.
take it back real quick. The only reason I wanted, I'm not pretentious. I didn't mention my birthday just for that reason to get it back.
Oh
But
yeah, I forgot. That's where we started.
The reason I said it was because this morning I sent my mom. Well, first of all, I had a package delivered to my mom, and she received it yesterday. And she called me and she was like, wow, what's this? And I was like, happy anniversary of you doing all the hard work to give me birth.
Oh, yeah.
So I told her today,
Yeah.
happy anniversary for working so hard. She was in labor for 36 hours.
Get out.
Yeah, it was brutal. But I
Can't
was
even
born on my
imagine.
grandfather's birthday, and so she had to get through past midnight to
No.
make it, and so the family was like, "Hold," kind of like
Yeah.
Braveheart, hold.
she's on hour 20 and they're like, nope.
12 more. Hang in there, pal. No, she actually held back 24 minutes to make sure that I was born on my grandfather's
Really?
birthday.
You're lucky you weren't
Wow.
born with like significant health challenges. That's how, literally, that is how JFK's sister was born mentally
By holding back?
impaired. Yes. When a child is ready to be born and the parent and the child is not allowed to come out,
Yeah.
it causes brain damage. Like the kid needs to be born. But
Finally,
they were like, they
an
told the doctors,
explanation.
wait. Yeah, no, they told the doctors, wait. The woman was like, no, I need to push her out. She needs to get out. She needs to get out. I can feel it. She's right there. And they were like, no, the doctor's not here. So don't push, And then the daughter was born and had all these brain problems and stuff because she, like there's oxygen in situations now. Because I don't know the science. I'm not a doctor, but like a baby won't take its first breath until it's like all the way like out. So that's why like when you have a shoulder dystocia, when a shoulder is stuck under a pelvis, it becomes real critical. And so there was this thing where the baby was coming out, but like nobody wouldn't let her just get the baby out. And so the baby had brain damage. And that's one of the reasons why JFK was so invested in the Americans with Disabilities Act, because he watched his sister get shuttled off into a home and missed her and loved her like many children with siblings with disabilities. Children with siblings with disabilities don't often experience their sibling the way that adult society does. They just experience their sibling. Yeah. And so he grew up having a lot of compassion for people with disabilities and wanted to create some reforms within that system so that, you know, they weren't just taking all the kids with Down syndrome and shoving them in a home.
Right.
You know, so, but that's how that happened because she wasn't allowed to give birth.
That's crazy.
So not to take your beautiful, hilarious story and like be like,
no, it's
actually,
fine.
Rick, but
it just explains a lot.
I'm glad that your mom was able to hold back for 20 more minutes and you were okay.
Just to think that I could have been a genius and instead this is what you get.
I'm going to tell you something right now.
Now you make knives.
When it was time, when that time came with Aurora, I don't even care if the Queen of England had been like, I need you to wait. I'd be like, I need you to get out of my room.
You know, honestly, I wouldn't have cared if the Queen of England was there either.
This kid is coming right now. You know, like it was, of course, she came out in 4 pushes. I was like, boom.
Wow.
Holy mackerel.
Especially for a first kid, right?
And I did it like a
champ.
Like Native American ancestors would have loved. My Native American ancestors. I like squatted down and I was like, ugh. And I like gave birth to her standing up, squatted down. I was like, Dylan said it was Dylan literally later. He was like, that was the most metal thing I've ever seen. That's how Dylan described birth.
That's funny.
That's awesome. All right, let's get this thing started.